I need a serious timeout in the bathroom. Splash water on my face and make sure I don't look like a total loser.
I hate that class, it's so fucking boring.
She's so fucking shy. She takes selfies with a giant cat.
It's not you, it's me, you see. It's not love or passion. There's something desperately wrong with me.
Those 3 words are the truth. But thanks to this remarkable game, you can utter them anywhere online and be overcome with the wildest of reactions. Some may think the very mention is set up for a joke, to then be surprised by others' unwavering adoration. Consensus exists, but there are 2. It's terrible. It's beautiful. How can a game universally panned for its writing hold overwhelmingly positive reviews?
Wrong. You got hella cash.
Why is it that even those who hate this game by every mechanical measure can still love it? Why does that same truth extend to those who don't like this genre, or those who have never played a game before in their life? Why can I go on for hours about how much this game sucks and still recommend it to anyone? This is the mystery we are here to solve, and we start in Blackwell Academy. Welcome to class. That's Mark Jefferson, a famous photographer now teaching in a high school. They're paying him a lot. Well, you are. It's a private establishment that comes with the baggage. Over there's Victoria Chase, as rich as can be and as entitled too. She's made a hobby of bullying Kate Marsh, who had an explicit video leak online. Fake, or so she thinks. Max's pastime, meanwhile, is a bit more personal. She likes taking selfies.
Shh. I believe Max has taken what you kids call a selfie. A dumb word for a wonderful photographic tradition.
Are you starting to see why opinions split? Max's other interests include being nosy, acoustic guitar, and controlling the 4th dimension. Which is convenient, because there's a dead girl in the bathroom.
Whoa. What the fuck?
This is the story's inciting incident. The school's rich kid, Nathan Prescott, puts a gun to a girl's belly and pulls the trigger. In Max's shock, she discovers her power and prevents the murder from ever taking place. She can rewind time. This isn't a dream, this is no hallucination. This is real. This is where things start getting interesting. What's going to happen next? Well, of course, as one would expect, you describe your experience as, and I quote, bizarro, then go on with your school life. That weed's not going to smoke itself. Surprised? Get used to it. Believability is in the eye of the beholder, but since most people watching this video are in fact human beings, we can come to a reasonable, average judgment that upon learning they have power over time and space, one would not concern themselves with returning some Muppet's USB stick. Perhaps you'd try to calm yourself down, to question reality, but to focus on what you know. This is portrayed. And then? Nothing. Your mind would be ablaze with why, with how, with who else might have it, with what could be done and what is even real. Everything you ever knew about science, you would doubt or reject instantly. Your understanding of existence itself and your place in the world shattered. Max's lack of ambition can be explained by who she is. For both her gifts, photography and time, her self-doubt fails to let them blossom. The photo that would have won her awards is torn up in the bathroom, but her total lack of cognition? That's inexplicable. Life is Strange continues under the expectation that you will just accept this, and eventually you will. If you don't, it's because you quit, and I wouldn't blame you. The game has made its core power nonsensical and stomped on the believability of the protagonist in the first 5 minutes, but in the hours to come, it will get so much worse than that. A conflict between what should be happening and what is happening is a monstrously destructive weight upon all of episode 1. Unlike Max, I've got a good idea about what to do with his power. Let's turn back the clock to the hallway. Round 2's a little different, because this time I'm not going to do what the game wants. This time, I'm going to do what every other player did on their first run, when Max wanted to escape to the bathroom and drown out the noise, just like she said. Oh, hi Juliet, how are you doing? Ah, sorry you're getting bullied, Daniel. Yo, they have this many awards? The most you'll hear from Max will be her thoughts on whichever item you've chosen to inspect.
I'm good to flow. Thanks.
Nearly every environment in the entire game is seeping with these voice lines, like clues in a detective game, except without the insight and a whole lot more empty, predictable rambling.
This girl must have been popular. She's everywhere.
What incredible fucking commentary. This is good because Max isn't a detective. A little awkward on the outside, slightly more lively on the inside. She is who she is, and who she is believable. But what she isn't is you. And you aren't her. What results is a severe conflict between player action and character motivation. Here we are in the very intro. Max's express intent is avoidance, escape. And yet the hallway is replete with items 9 out of 10 players will be compelled to interact with. Not only had the previous room tutorialized the mechanics and the value of thorough inspection, but the player has never seen this hallway. Are people not programmed to examine new places? Are they not likely to when information is put on display like a candy shop? The result is Max wanting to get to the bathroom, but the player doing everything but. Max wants to avoid other people, but the player wants to closely approach all of them because you have to for the button prompt. This problem is pervasive from the start of the game to the very end. Dontnod copied Telltale, who copied Quantic Dream, but unlike the designers of the much acclaimed Walking Dead, Dontnod had no experience whatsoever. Remember me? No, neither do I. But what you should know is that their first project was about kicking ass in Neo Paris. It's Dontnod's express manifesto to reinvent themselves with every game they make. And aside from Life is Strange 2, they've done that. But the problem should be clear. Am I to expect, with no prior experience, that they'd improve upon the Telltale format? Clearly, it isn't as easy as it looks. Victoria is a weapons-grade bitch, and to that end she and her simps have decided to block your pathway into the dorms, then, respectfully, ask that you go fuck yourselfie. Mad respect, Vicky. One might at first glance think of this as a puzzle, so take it away. How do you think we might be able to remove the cast of Mean Girls without hiring a hitman? Oh. Technically, all we have to do is get past her once, then rewind to essentially teleport by. We've got 2 jocks playing football, could say she tweeted that they had a what's it for a penis or something, could distract her and then run past, unless we assume she's going to suplex us, could even use that paint to do it. Yeah, nice ideas, but like the game said, go fuck yourselfie. What we actually have to do is interact with the only 2 objects that have prompts all of a sudden, because apparently Orbital striking her with a can of paint and framing innocent Samuel in the process is the smartest option here. There are no interesting decisions to be made. You simply experiment until a correct sequence of painfully slow events occur, which is doubly painful because the mechanic that could have made for hundreds of interesting puzzles instead sees fewer than 5 mildly engaging uses over the 15-hour runtime. One of those is a memory test. I can praise Dontnod for the multiple occasions remembering a bit of offhand information can save you a great deal of time, but these are exceptions. On the regular, you'll be tasked with finding something in an area which in real life would involve logical choices, but in Life is Strange involves pressing buttons on all the items available until the obvious solution reveals itself. What shocks, I think, beyond any other failing of gameplay, is the way performing a specific action will invariably have the same negative outcome no matter how many times you rewind. Getting a box down from Chloe's shelf, for example, breaks her snow globe. You'd think after the first 18 times Max would stop being such a dumbass, but apparently not. Why? Is it destiny?
Oh, man. I'll always make them fall.
Probably not a great idea to vocalize problems with the game design, Max. Kinda breaks the immersion. To what benefit are any of these items included? The snow globe contributes nothing but a break in believability. In a similarly unimmersive fashion, there's an inherent unbelievability to Max's action in the presence of nearly any other NPC. Well, Chloe's high as K2, so she may be the exception, but Max is strange, far more so than life. Something everyone she's ever laid eyes on should be swiftly convinced of, as she rummages around their personal belongings like a drugs bust right in front of them, or behind them. If it makes noise, it counts. What's important is that the environments aren't bad because of these issues, but the gameplay within them is needlessly worse than it should be. And what's interesting is that I try to fix all but the first in the exact same way. Simulating an environment with lifelike complexity is a task I would never expect any developer to achieve. The albeit imperfect trick lies in the presentation. Don't show me prompts in puzzles. Design areas with player observation in mind, then allow interaction upon close approach. You'd be attracted to what stood out and deduce solutions thereon. Alternatively, have prompted interactables act like clues, then locate the unprompted solution based off gathered information. Games, even in this genre, have been doing that for decades. Now you can have decision-making in the decision-making game, and at least for the first method, Max doesn't look so invasive despite being an introvert. Life is Strange's debut effectively introduced every character in the game, and kicked things off without a hitch. But the game makes such a clown of itself, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe that I wanted to see more. Uh-oh. Yo, what's that coming over the bay? Is it a giraffe? Is it a giant twister ready to wipe out Arcadia? No, silly, it's a Surfshark ad. Good thing too, because without them I'd be busking out with the A4 tramp trying to get a job in Nando's with my B in GCSE Media Studies. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you might have spent a lot of time at home recently. You were on Netflix, you're probably scraping the 6.0 IMDb score part of the barrel. I got you, fam. With Surfshark, simply swap over to one of their super fast servers abroad and you'll be watching Avatar: The Last Airbender on US Netflix in no time. Like I am. Right now. Of course, there are also numerous other benefits to making yourself harder to track in the modern world. Big Brother. I honestly don't get what the big deal is about a thought police, but I much prefer using Little Brother as a footstool, and I sure as shit don't want anyone reading my internet history. Surfshark's as good a deal as it gets. With my link, you'll get a colossal discount and 3 months on the house. All for 37 squid. That's 27 months for the same price a lot of people are paying for 4. Still not convinced? Well, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so don't sweat it. Go to surfshark.deal/whitelight down in the description for the best VPN deal you can dream of. And to help this channel surf above the sharks. Okay. The writing is bad, and the gameplay is worse. This equation isn't adding up, but clearly there's an answer. What did you get? It's snowing while the sun blazes and the moon isn't alone. Where Max is so devil-may-care regarding her life-changing powers that the devil would actually care more, this is not a problem that extends to her friends. Chloe is written honestly here. She wants proof beyond doubt, and then some fun. It's been 5 years since these two last met. Here they are, reconnecting with each other and Arcadia Bay. Are you? This place is described as nostalgic by its designers. There's something familiar about it, imparted by the media no doubt, and also something inherently new. Breathe it in. Life is Strange's visuals are a very interesting case. Every single texture is hand-painted in an impressionist style. Sometimes that impression is one of frankly shit graphics, and other times it's of dazzling artistic beauty. Out of Arcadia, you could mistake Max's face for a piece of crap PS2 character, but in it, blocky hair and entirely smooth skin come alive. Can the same be said for the view outside Mr. Jefferson's class window? You can paint every texture, but sometimes brushstrokes simply look like compressed pixels. Thank God attention is never drawn to the times this game could be mistaken for Transformers DS. Not sure that goes for the way Don't Nod handled images though. Anytime Max observes a photograph, she sees the real thing, but you see a contracted version so as to not break artistic consistency. It works. Most of the time. I know the game's about hipsters, but whatever brand of weed gets you inadvertently concepting a horror movie must be some primo shit.
That is such a sweet shot of Chloe.
The game can make a joke of itself that way. Daniel DaCosta gets bullied a lot. Forgive me, but I'm gonna have to join in. He's supposedly an incredible talent. For him to sketch you with a pencil is a true privilege. But then you take a look and it's a Microsoft Paint piece of crap. What do you mean best portrait ever, fam? That sucks hella dick. Small but hilarious caveats in an otherwise thoroughly beautiful game. Cinematography has a great role to play in that. You've seen the examples, but even as you peruse the environment, you may suddenly break into a different shot. When I say hipster, what do you think? Because what I think is art student in autumn, with a Polaroid camera and a beanie, bursting to tell whoever sits next to them on the bus about 1950s film techniques and memes. I think the game's ticked enough boxes, but we've yet to see the big one. We've heard it instead. I love this soundtrack, who wouldn't? It's so easy to make fun of the music in Life is Strange. Which is good because I'm afraid I'm joining in. What would you call this genre? Death Stranding featured it too, and I am eternally grateful to Hideo Kojima for introducing me to the truly mesmerizing low roar. Life is Strange though is so hip it'd make my arthritic grandma jealous, so naturally there's demand for a musical montage every corner you turn. Unfortunately, Don't Nod did not have access to Kojima's Spotify, they had to make do with Max's, and it turns out all you have to do to get a place on that list is have a voice like a constipated cat, the musical talent to pluck at 3 notes on an acoustic guitar, and the creativity to sing about a random girl you saw at the Burger King drive-thru. Give me 5 minutes, a can of helium, and a ukulele. I'll have the next Life is Strange soundtrack whipped up before you can say, "You've just gotta open your mind, bro. I bet you just listened to Taylor Swift." What do you want from me? Making fun of the things I love is my job. If Life is Strange didn't already emanate the smell of the devil's lettuce, you can also find what I call hipster moments scattered about Arcadia. They're optional musical montages that back incredible scenes such as sitting on a bed and sitting on a tree stump. It can come across as a little too much at times. Not everything has to be about vibing while acoustic guitar twat plucks at the same 3 notes. But can you have too much of a good thing? If it's cheesecake, just ask Alyssa. But if it's this game's infectious atmosphere, maybe not. My point is, Life is Strange radiates Arcadia Bay. It drips with addicting cliches. It bleeds it when it needs to. Spirit animals only you can see. Paranormal forces of nature, and endless mysterious forests with an orange sun sitting in the sky like a silent god. It's Twin Peaks for teenagers. You know, I've never actually watched Twin Peaks, so it might actually be already for teenagers. Huh. Or Dark Souls for hippies. With a world so stylistically rich, a connection is inevitable. Perhaps one you can relate to. I've long wondered why the supernatural fits so well with stories about the young. Perhaps because it's scary. It's the one thing parents can never protect their children from. Not what lurks in the dark, but the dark itself. But that's not Life is Strange. Max is no child, not anymore. Perhaps it's because the sense of something sinister, an unstoppable concept you can only ever see out of the corner of your eye is such an effective parallel for the secretive and harsh nature of the adult world. Something you don't know but you know is coming for you. Peeling back the veil of the lies of childhood and staring blankly at the inescapable truth is something every one of us has to do. It's the first of Life is Strange's 2 core themes. It's snowing in the heat of Oregon's autumn. The fish are disappearing. The birds are dying. It's subtle, but it's coming closer. This horror affected me earlier than any word on Don't Nod's script. Any word until Kate.
Kate! No! Oh God. She can't die. She can't.
Kate is the human encapsulation of this theme. She's likable and innocent, and her innocence was taken from her.
Don't be shy. I think it's awesome you set a tongue record on video.
You're going to be sorry someday.
Don't you sometimes wish you could go back? If you have a sibling, don't you wish you could see their innocence again? Kate is a little sister in that regard, a fact the writers presumably intended by letting us play that role nearly immediately. Don't you wish you could make whoever did this to her pay? Closer to Earth, I also think the angle of a high school drama, especially an American one, is something it seems everybody who ever lived enjoys, even when it isn't done particularly well. Look at Riverdale. Surprisingly, I didn't go to American high school. I grew up in London, where the kids say, "You don't know, suck your nan in it blood, batty boy ting brat brat." So often is American schooling presented with a fun or heartfelt story to us foreigners. High School Musical, Diary of a Simpy Kid, even the Spider-Man movies. Can't think of many people who won't be able to relate. We all went to school, and school affected us all. Embarrassment, bullying, being a good friend, or a bad one. The chance to relive these things is special. For some, reliving any time before adulthood is. The connection is enhanced to a fever pitch through numerous immersive qualities. The most obvious of all is the flip side of what we've covered. Arcadia Bay, though being split into scarce sets, is unexceptionally bursting with information and detail. From the diner to the campus, even the most mundane thing, there'll be multiple believable NPCs with full conversations, letters lying about, graffiti sprayed onto bathroom walls, a fisherman, a trucker, a Canadian, or a jukebox, a Native American totem, or a message from Ross Geller. Like I said, gameplay sucks, but not the environments. For a game that so heavily features photography, I suppose how much Don't Nod get out of angles is no surprise. It's not just the detail, it's what environments are chosen and when. Sets are unfortunately reused very often. Budgetary restraints, no doubt, but Don't Nod circumvent this issue with time. Here we are in the girls' dormitories. Wow, last time I said that I was arrested. But this time, it's in the morning, and a while later, it'll be at night. It's perspective. It's why HBO's Chernobyl is a masterpiece. Taking a shower, getting breakfast as all the morning dorm drama plays out could only draw you in. Hearing a vulnerable girl open up about something you did can be just as impactful as actually doing it. By Don't Nod's own admission, your classmates are stereotypes. That comes with negative connotations, but the clear advantage is the air of nostalgia. Yes, I actually think having the bitch archetype and the jock archetype, but in Arcadia Bay and with Don't Nod's depth, allows the game to siphon energy from atmospheres you've experienced before. The negative connotations are unwarranted. Stereotype doesn't guarantee unbelievable, nor does it equate to shallowness. Though, ironically, that is what teenagers are stereotyped to be. Many, and many is an understatement, were put off this game just by the horror of hearing Victoria speak.
Now you're totally stuck in the retro zone. Sad face. Now, why don't you go fuck your selfie?
Vocalizing emojis? Selfies? No, get it away. Doesn't get much more subjective than speech patterns, but I think hearing teenagers speak like an Arby and the Chief character is funny. Who knows if it's accurate? Slang is regional and Arcadia Bay isn't even real. Besides, trust me, Hella and Wowza and Bizarro are a fuck sight better than PogChamp. Like, oh my god, Victoria, your new dress is like so totally poggers. Stop it, you're gonna make me cry. Heh Kappa. You thought. Shallow, that's one stereotype. What's the other? Social media. But first, let me take a selfie. If you've watched my Death Stranding video, you know my thoughts on that. But Life is Strange doesn't have Twitter, so problem solved, I guess. At the very least, it saves me the pain of watching Warren end up on struggle tweets. No, we're going back to the retro zone when all the cool cats used MySpace, or failing that, just texted. In the middle of almost anything, Max can be messaged relative to the choices you made beforehand. There's a lot to read about a person from the way they text, it's another language entirely. So seeing the characters written honestly in that dimension is even greater an angle than a morning or a night. Watching Warren endlessly pine for your attention says more about him than anyone else's opinion, but just by simply being a relatable reminder that these characters truly exist, that their world goes on when Max isn't looking. Unexpectedly receiving a text is a remarkably immersive thing. There are times you'll wish someone had texted rather than spoke, but there are far more times you won't. Of all Life is Strange's immersive qualities, among the greatest is also among the most obvious. It's the acting. It doesn't get much better than Ashley Birch. The charisma she brings to Chloe is the character's greatest asset.
I pledge allegiance to Max and the power for which she stands.
Her mother, Joyce, is brought to life by the award-winning Cissy Jones.
Very good save.
And step douche David is done by Don McManus.
So you better figure out what side you're on.
Famous for his role in the 2015 video game Life is Strange, where he voiced Hayden.
I have to get my chemical on and study.
That's quite a range. What troubles me is the direction. It's hard to ignore the frequency of unnatural inflections and stresses that crop up throughout the game. Listen, this is when you ask Brooke about the snow and they both stress the same words in the same way.
Did you see the freak snowfall yesterday?
I was riveted by that weird snow flurry yesterday.
Nobody in actual conversation does this, but separated actors would if there was a problem with the direction, a theory evidenced even more so by how incorrectly some of the lines translate into the game. When you speak to Justin in the diner, he says, "Of course I'm baked, so I'll laugh at anything." The way he actually says, "Of course I'm baked," implies Max had asked him if he was baked, but the context and the meaning of the sentence should have resulted in, "Of course I'm baked." Again, during Warren's science experiment, "You'll be a scientist yet." Here, obviously, yet should have been stressed, but it isn't, and the sentence is totally off. This is a very easy mistake to make when you're reading off a script, because you'll start speaking before you've actually processed the meaning of what you're saying. Believe me, I'd know. By far the biggest surprise the acting had to offer was the IMDb page. I'll do you the mercy of not putting it up on screen, but it is unbelievable the amount of characters played by the same actor in this game, Alyssa and Kate. Speaking of whom, time for a checkup. After having nearly been turned into Dolmio by a freight train, Chloe drives Max back to Blackwell for class, where Victoria puts the arse in class. Kate puts the arse in Assassin's Creed. She's gonna do it. She's gonna leap of faith with no hay bale. Aliens in the fucking Andromeda galaxy could see this coming. With a naked eye. What with her absence in class and torment without end. I am surprised no one thought this was a likely outcome. But regardless, what we have here is what I'd call the entire game's most memorable moment. It's also the game's most contrived. Somehow, Max gains the ability to freeze time, and then loses all of her powers the instant she makes it onto the roof. That's real slick, Don't Nod. Yeah, I don't think anyone noticed. From rubbing mean messages off mirrors to accepting her phone call, the ways you can make Kate's life just a little better do end up mattering to the tens of possible conversations you can have here. That's rewarding, goes without saying. But easily its most impressive element is how your memory of Kate's beliefs and family impact your ability to talk her down. It's only in a single postcard that you learn of her loving father. It's only on a note, squashed between pages of a disused Bible, that you learn of her wisdom. Being rewarded for paying attention, for showing that you actually do care, is as satisfying as it is immersive. This is what I call gameplay, even though it's the story. Look, the lines are blurred. Unfortunately though, the writers struggle to hide the mechanics behind Kate's thoughts. Every time you say something correctly, Kate overtly replies something like, "That makes me feel better," as if she were an algorithm instead of a person. We also run into a couple conflicting processes. When you affirm your determination to find proof of Nathan's crimes, she promises to help. Then not 3 seconds later, she's telling you to stand the fuck back or she's gonna make Ezio Auditore look like a fucking amateur. It's flawed, deeply, but it's also among the most rewarding moments I've ever had in a story-driven game. I like Kate. I do not want her to die, and I can make that a reality by proving I care, believably. I think we're ready now. We've seen enough to answer the question. Oh, the writing may be bad and the gameplay may be worse, with rare exception, but that won't stop anyone from loving Life is Strange. It won't stop me from liking it. It, as if it were doubted, all comes down to subjectivity. Does the air of vapidity that one might associate with selfies or emojis immediately turn you off? Can you relate to the characters or to the themes? Does this atmosphere touch you? Clearly, the chances are high. Life is Strange is one of a kind for this medium. Few games tackle more down-to-earth, personal problems like suicide and grief, but next to no games tackle so wide an array. By merely exploring a theme believably, one can receive a similar experience to opening up about their troubles and having someone else listen. In an astoundingly accessible format, this game tackles tough, relatable issues with decent, relatable characters in a rich, immersive world. Life is Strange cast a wide net. Anybody can play this game, whether you've got a computer, a console, or just a phone. Anybody can play it because it's simple in design, and when anybody can relate to it too. Perhaps the mystery of Life is Strange isn't so strange after all.
Kate!
Ugh, looks like Chloe wants something. And hey, Max is taking care of Kate's bunny. What a legend. Life is Strange gets full marks for juggling its endless themes, plots, and characters without once feeling forced or unnatural. Despite being about literally everything and having so many characters I can't count them, every time you watch one develop or run into the opportunity to have a conversation, what's key and consistent is believability. Taylor upset in the bathroom at night? I buy that. And I buy Weed with no ease try to shift the conversation to what's troubling her. Only a minute later, Principal Wells is seen drunkenly stumbling outside his accommodation. Clearly, he's struggling to cope with the immense burden of leading so severely troubled a school. And a minute after that, Mr. Jefferson exits the academy with Victoria. Of course, she's sucking up to the teacher for better chances in the Everyday Heroes contest. Seems like she's willing to take sucking up more literally too, which Jefferson responds to with feigned ignorance. Continue this trend with rare breaks in the believability throughout the game, and it's no surprise Life is Strange avoids boredom so consistently. Yeah. Characters may display infrequent lapses, but the plotting never does, apart from the bottles, and when there's no stakes. Kate isn't something we can just move on from. We can't make like Chloe and act like it didn't happen. What it calls into question above all is how Life is Strange handles stakes. Sometimes the game will magically invent them out of thin air by stripping away your admin powers. Sometimes the game will fabricate them in a far more frustrating manner, and other times there are simply no stakes at all. I can't say how much inspiration Life is Strange took from Breaking Bad, but however much it was, it all comes down to the confrontation with Frank. He knows what drugs Nathan Prescott was buying on the night of Kate's video. We're prepared to kill him, but that's not the goal. We just need his records. It's all a matter of saying the right thing. This is by far the toughest conversation to nail, but unlike Kate's, we've still got the rewind. Tough doesn't mean much then, because ironically, Breaking Bad's writing genius can no longer exist to any degree at all. That show worked because actions had believable consequences. You shot a guy. That had come back to haunt you in every way you believe it would. It established its grim believability so strongly that even a character taking a dump was enough to give you a panic attack. But this isn't tense. What Don't Nod have done with trial and error is achieve the exact fucking opposite. The only way you can come out of this with Chloe as a murderer and Max as an accomplice is if you can't be bothered to rewind. Thematically, the power is intended to let you live out the fantasy of actions without consequence, to go back and change something you regret. That's a fantasy everyone has had in one way or another. But there are times, like this, that Life is Strange should have shown restraint, because it isn't real life. It's a video game. It's fiction. In a story, I want tension. I want stakes. In a supposedly vital conversation, I'm dozing off. You can still attribute some unpredictability to most choices in the game because their consequence isn't immediately clear. But in Frank's case, everything plays out there and then, so the scene's left with nothing. I'd happily take contrived bullshit for stakes over Jack All any day, I think. Let's test that theory. Here's an example, the likes of which we haven't seen before. In episode 2, when Kate opens up about her situation to Max, we are faced with a choice. Go to the police with accusations of Nathan Prescott, or wait and collect more proof. Wait for proof, I'd say. Nathan's an influential guy, and the police usually like some evidence with their accusations. Max states this perfectly well, but instead of next explaining her intention to get some fucking proof, she decides to go on and on about how the police would never believe Kate, which to no one's shock, triggers an outburst.
So that's your answer?
I think we should wait. There are other things going on that might help you.
But not right now. So I can walk down the halls with people calling me a viral slut. Thanks, Max.
She forgot the basis of her own argument. You have to trade between Kate's happiness and her chances at justice. But if Max hadn't momentarily swapped brains with a fucking turnip, I wouldn't have to trade anything. Christ, it's a safe bet a turnip would have had the brains to simply rewind and deliver a better pitch. In the same way we've been doing persistently from start to finish, it makes Max look like a plum, the game ridiculous, and not 30 minutes later, Don't Nod manages to do it again. Chloe wants to leave the diner, but Kate's calling. For reasons incomprehensible to human minds, Chloe has a reactor meltdown at the idea of Max delaying to take a 30-second call, so you're meant to trade between pissing her off and letting down Kate. Once again, we're witness to an awfully convenient brain transplant. Is Max not capable of talking to Kate as they walk to Chloe's car? Why does this even have to be a decision? Why couldn't Max just rewind and text Kate as she goes? The time travel is simply dropped at a moment's notice. In moments that Max would undoubtedly use it in, and does numerous times previously. We know she hacks conversations. And we also know Max takes items into her possession via the teleportational nature of her rewind. So check this out. In the first episode, you can either stop David from bullying Kate, or you can take a photo of it happening for evidence. But the photo is a physical object, which means it should be unaffected by rewind so long as Max holds onto it. All she has to do is take the photo, rewind, then intervene. Choice negated. Nice idea, but no cigar. When the photo later becomes relevant, Max doesn't have it. If the game isn't making her look like a cretin, it's breaking its own rules. Life is Strange is about the inescapability of consequences. It's about giving you the power of actions without recourse, and then showing you that was no escape at all. But a message can struggle to hold weight when its evidence is invented before your eyes. I'm led to a harsh conclusion. The implementation of time travel is Life is Strange's greatest failing. The inherent unbelievability of Max's reaction, multiple flaws of the gameplay, and the situations I just described. None of these glaring problems would exist were it not for how terribly Don't Nod executed their core mechanic. But I regret that was just the tip of the iceberg. This rabbit hole is so deep, I can hardly believe it to this day. Now let's start small, okay? The time travel makes sense, as long as you don't think about it. And I don't mean think hard, I mean think about it at all. And I don't mean think about it at all, I mean allow your neurons to fire. Max doesn't just time travel, she teleports.
You are magic! I have no clue how the hell you got in there, but you...
Wait, hang on a minute. If everything rewinds in space but her, then why doesn't Earth? The planet rotates and orbits the sun, which orbits the galaxy, which hurtles through the universe towards the Great Attractor. So... In the description, I argue that Max's ability to phase objects into each other and displace air faster than the speed of light would kill her, or failing that, destroy the universe. But at this point, quite clearly, we're going off the deep end. If I were to sit here pointing out holes in the time travel logic, we'd still be going next week. So it's a damn relief that there's no point in doing that, because not all logical breaks matter. If it's unlikely that the average player notices a problem, its severity is equally unlikely to be great. Who decides what the average player will notice? I'd say it's the writer. They know their plot holes. It's up to their judgment to keep them out of the spotlight. An example of failure would be teleportation. The game overtly incorporates this mechanic. Chloe comments on it twice. It's even tutorialized in words.
Presto! Dude, it's getting old. Try and dazzle me with another trick.
But Max not being flung off the planet whenever she rewinds? That's not so dire. It's also not what people tend to fixate on when dunking on Don't Nod's time travel. It's easy to laugh at the logic, but I think there's some valuable wisdom to be found in the title. Life is Strange was originally going to be called What If? Supposedly, the theme is about freedom from choice. What If draws attention to exactly that. You buy a game called What If, your mind is primed to think about things that way. Life is Strange, on the other hand, though being a far more charismatic title, draws attention to strangeness, oddities, specifically the supernatural element. I play a game with that title, I expect hella bizarro shit to go down. Now that's what I have in mind. I do believe the title played a role in amplifying frustrations, but it could have been called Acoustic Guitar Twat's Grand Adventure. People would still want some answers. The lack of any explanation whatsoever regarding the time travel is something nearly every negative review of this game brings up, but nearly every defense will simply tell you that it doesn't matter, because the time travel isn't the point. They're right. Though to act like the believability suffers nothing at all is a little overzealous, it doesn't suffer that much. The time travel isn't the focus, it's a plot device. You didn't have to tell me why the birds are dying. I don't care why the moon had a heated gamer moment and inexplicably eclipsed the sun. I sure as hell don't want to know about the logic behind the application of chaos theory, because I'm already on my third heart attack from the cocaine alone. What I do care about is why Max and why then. Why did the universe decide she and Chloe were worth running this little experiment for? No explanation at all doesn't render the story meaningless, but it does make the events meaningless for the Life is Strange world. For the people in it, what explains any of the catastrophes that face them? When this realization becomes clear around episode 5, the barrier between you and the game is at its strongest, because of how blindingly obvious it is now that the overarching plot doesn't play out in an actual world, but the world exists solely to serve this plot. Warren, David, Brooke, they are just actors in Max's story, but I'm never meant to believe that. By the end, Life is Strange makes it impossible not to believe that, by solipsistically having every existential event happen only for the sake of specific characters, going through the necessary events to explore the game's themes. Case in point, at the end of episode 3, Max rewinds, but this time there's no stopping it. She awakens in her 13-year-old body, the day of Chloe's father's death. She can prevent it. She can change time forever, and she does.
I know I had those keys right here. I know it.
It's unexpected, it's interesting, it's emotional.
You can take the bus, right? The stop is right down the street.
This I can do. Good call, Max.
What I'm about to say, it doesn't quite add up. I'll drop the pretenses. This is brilliant. This timeline hacking is the one and the only successful application of time travel in Life is Strange.
Max, you are being so fucking strange. You feel okay?
Chloe, I am awesome. We are awesome.
It sets you in a new envisioning of the Bay, and by doing that adds an interesting layer to every character in it. Max could be extroverted, Victoria could be kind and welcoming, William could be alive, but what's interesting above all is whether or not he should be. If William lives, then he gifts Chloe a car for her 18th birthday, in which her spine is snapped and she is paralyzed from the neck down. Was it worth it? It's tough to witness what we knew was a happy family crumble at the seams over medical bills, and the impending knowledge that Chloe will one day soon stop breathing. Tough to know that you're responsible. If your friend was in this position, and they asked you for euthanasia to save them and their family the pain, would you do it? That's the choice you're asked to make. And after having just saved William, now you know he had to die. Now it's your job to condemn him. For me, that's the game's emotional zenith. What better way to show you the inescapability of consequences? What better way to use time travel in a character-driven game? With the benefit of hindsight, it's only evidence of the idea that who and what you relate to influences your experience of this game to an unprecedented degree. Every game is subjective, but this game is big subjective. I felt more than enough in this forsaken place, but nothing for Chloe herself. Then again, for a game focused on a core cast of 3 characters, I cared more about Kate than any of them. That's right, 3. Max, Chloe, and Rachel. If you've never played this game, you might not know who she is, but that's understandable because she's not strictly in Life is Strange. I mean, she is in it. Rachel's a little like Hannah Baker, but with no screen time, much less cutting, and more simping.
Hey, give me that!
Sorry, I wasn't trying to be nosy. Obviously, she was a good friend.
It's putting it mildly.
The town is conscientiously adorned with her missing persons posters, so it makes sense that she's on everyone's mind. Her personality and relationships are naturally exposited only through conversation with those who knew her, that being nearly everyone. But what's particularly interesting is how she's painted in a seraphic, almost divine light. Everybody loved her, and if they understood her negative side, there was still something to be revered. The cool kids, the nerds, even the truckers, all who live became her simp. And none more than Chloe. Finding out what happened to Rachel motivates both of the longest episodes, 3 and 4. That's nearly half the game. But Max never knew Rachel, so why on earth are we so invested? Well, Chloe's got her own simps. You, Max. 1/3 of every episode at least is dedicated to Chloe, spending time with her, bonding with her, and investigating her interests such as David, Frank, and Rachel. Episode 3 is Chloe from dawn to dusk, and most of episode 4's that way too. This gets to such a point that Max feels like a supporting character in her own game. For all the hours upon hours we spend with Chloe's family, lamenting her life or otherwise vibing with the queen of cool, we spend no such time for Max. It's a very surprising dynamic for a game like this, but on paper, it suits Life is Strange rather well. It's all about nosying into other people's lives and making choices for their sake. Though I'll concede there are some times Max is explored, she is never the focus, she's just a receptacle for the player. You're sticking around for everyone else. With Kate, I wouldn't miss it for the world. With Chloe, well, she has an immense weight to bear. The game is utterly obsessed with her, and though Ashley Birch might be up to the task, the writers are not. With Chloe's leading position, her motivations drive the story, but they're selfish. Escape to LA, pay off drug money, the major exception being Rachel, but I've delayed stating the obvious long enough. Nobody gives a shit. Chloe might, but for us, for the players, she's not in the story. She's only technically a character at all. So how could finding her possibly motivate me? Chloe's personality is no crutch in my opinion. She is rude, entitled, and unfathomably selfish. She tried to rob $5 grand from handicapped people and made you feel like a jackass for stopping her. If she wasn't presented in such a sympathetic lens, she'd be the villain. That's a problem in a game that moves mountains to make you care for her well-being. It just isn't a problem inherently. Bad people are not bad characters. Walter White and Edward Kenway are shining examples of that. So what's the difference here? You ever heard the phrase that every villain is the hero of their own story? I can't think of a single compelling bad person who didn't have some philosophical or moral justification for their actions. That even extends to Gus Fring, the devil incarnate. I don't think he was the bad guy in his head. None were. Even if it was a lie they told themselves to sleep at night. Chloe lacks any such quality. There's nothing to root for. Nothing to be drawn to either. Captain Jack Sparrow is one of the best characters in film. There's not much debate about that, but it's not because he's such a lovable hero. It's because he's just lovable. He's a magnetic presence. His selfishness is actually a part of his charisma. And though Chloe can be fun, she just isn't for the lion's share of the runtime. On the flip side, we have Mr. White. For him, it's something else. He's not fun. He's not likable, but he is engaging. He's got shifting goals and countless conflicts, all of which have a profound effect on the people around him and the man he becomes. Walter is deep. Is Chloe? Well, she's got a complicated relationship with Max and an interesting fear of accepting responsibility for parts of her life. Chloe is probably the deepest character in Life is Strange, but there's no exactly overwhelming competition. The main character could be replaced by a blow-up doll and you'd be none the wiser. RPGs very rarely have the most complex protagonists. Wouldn't want anything to stand in the way of the RP. Yet we still love Geralt, don't we? We still like Adam Jensen and Commander Shepard. They have what Max doesn't. charisma. Through voice, motion, and dialogue, they present a unique personality. I'd follow Commander Shepard into a war, and I'd trust Adam Jensen to decide the future, but I wouldn't let Max alter my past, because I'd have forgotten her. The trouble is, if you want to portray a compelling teenager, charisma, charm, wit, these things to any vast degree are inherently unbelievable. No contemporary teenager will inspire people like Daenerys, be as witty as House, or as badass as Batman. Name one. Just one good character still in high school. I'll start. You ever read Harry Potter? Who am I kidding? You bought Life is Strange, of course you have. Hermie One Gardiner's depth ranges from her insecurity as a Muggleborn to her roguishness conflicting with her perfectionism. Ron, measly working-class peasant, is defined by being so consistently overshadowed by everyone around him, yet still being invaluably brave and loyal. I won't delve into a 40-minute character study, but Chloe, who probably thinks Potter's for normies, would still have to call him hella deep. Not something he could say of her, but she is the one who needs it. I can tolerate Max's flat personality, but Chloe tries to hold the weight of half the game with only the strength of her voice actor. It doesn't work. So, what is it about episode 4 that had me so engaged? No, I'm kidding. I'm not about to tell you it was Chloe either. I love Arcadia Bay, and I don't want it to die. There are two things that disease it, two mysteries. One lands with great potency. The paranormal doesn't have to do much to keep me interested. The moon sits in the sky with a partner. A stranding of whales beached in line. That sinister feeling. It's still here. And on the human side of things, Nathan Prescott's mystery acts as the key to the bigger one. What's happening to the girls in Arcadia Bay? He's insane, he's rich, he's violent, but there's something more to him. He needs help. What's his secret? In the dark room, you find it. A bunker hidden in a barn, secluded in the middle of nowhere. And within it is a file for 100 women or more, including Kate Marsh, including Rachel Amber. But for her, there's a location. The escalation of the drama is palpable. Finding Rachel's corpse in a junkyard, marked by the smell of putrefaction of all things. It's a sickening note. I didn't care about Rachel, and I still don't. But this managed to hit hard all the same. The acting is brilliant, and the contrast of the situation is shocking. Rachel, an angelic figure, is rotting in a junkyard. Of all the possible outcomes, something so bad we couldn't even envision it was the one that happened. It's visceral. Oh, the stakes hurt. The time travel hurts. And as insane as that implementation is, what this game rarely fails to be is dramatic. I can point to exceptions, but a scene rarely goes by without a conflict of interest because the plot threads are dealt with so densely. The plot sets up the drama, the acting creates the emotion, the world deals with the immersion, which enhances both. The characters do very little at all. See what I mean? Plot twist. Turns out Jefferson has a fetish or two.
I could frame any one of you in a dark corner and capture you in a moment of desperation.
Gee, he sounds like a suspect tweet celebrity. Oh shit, I was supposed to be taking this seriously. Sorry, I forget. Can't exactly say the game sets the tone. Rachel Amber got abused, murdered, and left to rot in a ditch. Kate tried to kill herself. Chloe was shot in the head. Victoria's on my left, begging for her life, and I'm in the hot seat of a bona fide nutcase serial killer. Who, in the name of fuck, thought this ridiculous Count Dracula voice was appropriate?
You're the winner, Max. I choose you. Your portrait.
He even explains his evil plans.
Simply put, I'm obsessed with the idea of capturing that moment. Innocence evolves into corruption.
This villain is funny. It goes without saying what that does to the believability, and I already have a hard time buying Jefferson being the Tesco value Hannibal Lecter. Chloe is a lacking character, but this goon screws the game by virtue of existing. He earns a higher spot on the list of problems every time he opens his mouth. So let's shut it. With a Deus Ex Machina so unapologetic it's actually worthy of exhibition, David comes to your rescue about 3 nanoseconds before Jefferson hits you up with the unholy Capri Sun. The following boss fight was a great idea on paper. You'd persistently rewind and give David updated directions on how to kick his ass. In execution, however, well, it's actually the execution that's the problem. Even when you warn David Big D Jarhead Madsen, a trained combatant,
David, watch out!
he still manages to get his ass kicked by the cover of GQ magazine every time. This being Life is Strange, it's not like you can provide better directions either. You can't tell him to put his gun in a close quarters stance or dash past the entrance. Instead, you have to ask Jefferson for a glass of water, push a table into his ass, and then knock over a lamp. Because of course, in a life or death situation, you would turn to face a falling lamp like it held your grandma's ashes. Remember the Victoria's bony ass puzzle? It's the remix. Well, thanks David, I'd take the now impending mega tornado of a Count Twatula any day. But as much as I hate him, he is the final encapsulation of this game's first major theme, lost innocence. That runs in parallel to the tornado, the final encapsulation of the game's second major theme, the inescapability of consequence. There is a vital distinction between a theme and a message, one that many conflate, and there's no better place to look for a display of that than this game's sequel, Death Stranding. A theme is just that, a common subject matter. A message, however, is using that theme to impart an idea. It's equally important to understand that you can be profound without having a message. A deep exploration of a theme can be just as powerful as a message, especially if it's one you relate to. It can release bottled up emotion, it can show you that you're not alone. Death Stranding had tens of themes, most of them it simply explored, but specifically with a theme of connection, it tried to send a message. Another example, Deus Ex Human Revolution, is a deep exploration of corruption, transhumanism and all manner of politics, with impressive nuance. But it never tells you what to think, it leaves it up to you to decide. Life is Strange's lost innocence is thoroughly intertwined throughout. The game starts with a barely turned 18 girl having fun, reunited with her best friend of times past. Arcadia Bay is bright. Max is still tied up in her small-scale teenager drama. Chloe is just happy to be back with her mate after so long, but with a little more time. The veil withers. Kate is swiftly snatched from you. The clothes of innocence are peeled back to reveal Rachel Amber, the seraphim in flesh and blood festering in the ground. And Mr. Jefferson, your perfect idol, was a serial killer all along. Suicide, abuse, murder, and hope. Stamped out. Any innocence they had left is gone. A representation, to a degree, of what so many of us experienced as we grew from child to adult. That's why it can be effective. I can relate. The theme of consequences, on the other hand, is one that is far closer to the heart of the game's overall plot. It's explored through the time travel, the supernatural, and of course, the tornado. With all of these things, a message is sent. There is no escape. Case in point. On numerous occasions during episode 5, Max uses photos to severely alter the timeline, and what always seems to follow is a short moment of hope, followed by the grim realization that she's only made things worse, or that the storm is still approaching. You feel this repeated cycle of hope and despair right along with Max, and through that an idea is imprinted. You cannot escape consequences, you cannot hide, you have to face the storm. That'd be incredibly successful, were it alone. The no easy way out choices are, as much as I hate to say it, better there than not, because the consequences of your choices bolster the immersion. They take the game a step above an interactive movie. But of course, the problem is that the supposedly tough situations make absolutely no sense and crudely force you into binary decisions despite how easy it'd be to do exactly what the game is trying to say you can't. The proof of the message is fabricated before your eyes. When the game tries to create significant consequences for your actions, I can count on one hand the times it doesn't make a fool of itself. And when it doesn't try to create consequences in the first place, it has no stakes, which is far greater a problem than looking stupid. I would take this opportunity to remind you that Life is Strange references Breaking Bad. This is becoming a really fun meme now. Believable characters, believable consequences. So let's think about what should have the most groundbreaking impact of them all, the time travel. I don't want to talk about her reaction. I want to talk about her development. Max has the power to divorce consequences from actions by deleting the action itself. They struck gold. This is a trove of potential for Max's character depth, but it is left untapped. Why? People act like Muppets and monsters online today because they know nothing will come of it. People already indulge the worst of themselves regularly, with only a small pool of actions and only quenched consequences not removed entirely. Max doesn't have the power to call someone a cock lobster and get away with it. She has the power to kill, maim, torture, or any unspeakable act that comes to mind. Any horrid temptation she could indulge, and yet she retains the best of intentions. It's beyond belief that a sheltered person's sense of morality would stay intact with power like this. But Max isn't sheltered. She's repeatedly traumatized from the start of the game to the very end, yet she becomes more conventionally moral. She develops from shy and timid to an unwavering moral paragon, a superhero. In an exploration of mostly believable characters, that's baffling. For an RPG, that's baffling. This isn't about personality, which is understandably constrained. This is about morals. Morals whose direction you could control, as choice-based games are known for. Even without the power, would it not be hard to resist the temptation to pick up Jefferson's gun and kill him after he shot your best friend, almost killed Kate, and you? Don't Nod could have nailed this theme down so hard you could say they crucified it. But they didn't. They hardly started. And whether or not from what I've said you think they did well enough, we've yet to get to the most important decision of them all, the one that changes everything. Episode 5's presentation does a remarkable share of the heavy lifting for its sense of climax, but because Max has played with time like it's her bitch, events can feel a little fleeting as you encroach the end. Despite having an array of people to save and just as many emotional conversations to have, Max's overt intention throughout is to find a photo and wipe this nightmare away. Again, time travel and stakes don't mesh well in this game. But the epitome is of course the ending. Oh, the ending. The final decision where you can choose between allowing the tornado to massacre Arcadia Bay, rendering all your choices and relationships pointless, or going back in time to let Chloe die, rendering all your choices and relationships pointless. Remember Kate? Yeah, well, now you can choose between making her suicide no less likely, or killing her after having saved her from suicide. It goes without saying what that does for the replayability, but I'd be slightly more forgiving if the endings themselves were worth the wait. Unfortunately, it looks like Save the Bay got 90% of the $10 production budget, and it shows. In a moment of part redemption, Chloe directly tells Max that she's willing to die for these people. Her mother doesn't deserve to be slaughtered in a diner for her sake. If Max ignores this, how, in her infinite wisdom, does she presume Chloe is going to live with herself? How can she look Max in the eye again after killing everyone she's ever known? Who knows? Because it ends on a pleasant cruise through the town you just flattened. And on that spectacularly shit note, the credits roll. By saturating the game with supposedly important decisions, then being brutally told that absolutely none of them matter, any message regarding consequence is suppressed. The end. I find myself for the second video in a row making an incredibly difficult conclusion, where one game's double successes were hard to explain. For this game's adoration, it was easy. I've just never seen it in contrast to countless inescapable failures. The core mechanic, I could frame it and hold it up as the single worst implementation of time travel I have ever seen in fiction. The message landed with all the profundity of a raindrop in a puddle. But as is incontrovertibly evidenced, Life is Strange can still have a profound impact on those who play it. Because for the first time in my life, I don't like the protagonist, I don't like the other protagonist, I don't like the villain, I don't like the core mechanic, I don't like the message, I don't like the gameplay, I don't like the stakes, I don't like the depth, I do like the believability but not at the end and it's hurt by Max. I don't like the ending, I don't like the dumbass tornado, I don't like the motivations, I don't like the puzzles, I don't like the voice acting problems, I don't like Max's selective memory, I don't like Daniel DaCosta's stupid fucking drawing. But I do like Life is Strange, and I always will. Thank you for watching. And thank you for waiting so long since Unity. 2020 has been the Dark Souls of years, of that there's no question, but nevertheless, I'd love to keep bringing you fresh content in every sense. This was something a little more experimental for me, so if you want more, please do let me know. Before the Storm was just on sale, like oh my god. Special thanks go out to my Chad patrons: Fabian Flack, What's Ben Played, Flip Slip Me Dick, The One True, Ethan Hunley, Caleb Doss, Alcis World, Attila, Nathan, Corbin Davies, Hutch Puppy, Rakin Hock, Justin, Joshua Yind, Joey9451, Darren Bugaja, Cameron Bowen, Separatu, Uriara Heap, Devontae Williams, Matt Phobia, Just a Clone, I Know Lucky, Blake Noland, Dylan Schaefer Murphy, Mardy, Mr. T with some T, Gurneil Kang, Sim, John Lemley, Bishop Nelson, Benjamin Carter, Dominic Jaworski, Lex Williams, Al Hudson, John B, Sean Oddy, Dan Walker, Arc Nines, Yeet Lord, Brendan, Frank Riff, The Last Great Opium Den, Warthold, Benjamin, Paddy McPhee, Phosphor, Lucas de Azevedo, Hey I'm Tim, Joshua W. Shriner, Sai, Shade, Quarter Gamer, Ballistic Rainbow, Chance Tucker, Drop ZZ, Combat Wombat, Juris Purins, Holy Shift, Andre Baltuta, Noah B. Satterley, Leon Cuttendall, and Abby.